My sister loved to sneer at me for marrying a guy who just runs a DVD shop, while she bragged nonstop that her husband was some big-shot finance genius. Then their fancy investments crashed, and suddenly my parents were on my case, telling me to sell that little video store to bail them out. They both went silent and pale when my husband calmly explained who actually owned the entire building, every rental unit above it, and the other stores they'd been walking past their whole lives. They called my husband a relic, mocked our quaint little video store, and then, with breathtaking entitlement, demanded we sacrifice everything to bail them out. The sheer, gut-wrenching shock on their faces when they discovered who we really were? That's a memory I'll savor forever. I remember it like it was yesterday. The clinking champagne flutes, the forced laughter, and my sister, Veronica, her voice dripping with that special brand of sweetness that could cut glass. To the happy couple, she'd said, who always did play in the past. The snickers that followed hit me like a physical blow. 200 wedding guests turned to stare at me and Liam. My name is Clara, and that was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Honestly, I should have known Veronica wouldn't let my wedding pass without reminding everyone exactly where I stood in the family pecking order. There she was, radiant in her designer bridesmaid dress, holding court at the head table. Me? I was sitting there in my grandmother's altered wedding gown, fighting back tears. Clara, honey, smile, my mother, Eleanor, hissed from beside me, her perfectly manicured fingers digging into my arm. People are watching. Of course they were watching. They'd been watching my whole life, waiting to see which Blair sister would stumble first. Spoiler alert, it was always going to be me. Liam's calloused hand found mine under the table, his thumb tracing gentle circles on my palm. When I looked at him, his brown eyes were steady and kind, completely unbothered by the snickers echoing around us. Let them laugh, he murmured, close enough that his breath tickled my ear. We know what we have. God, I loved that man, even after he'd spent the morning reorganizing shelves at his video store. Because, yes, he'd insisted on making sure a rare Criterion collection was properly filed on our wedding day. He was more real than anyone in that room, full of pressed suits and fake smiles. I still can't believe you're marrying a DVD store owner, my youngest sister, Chloe, whispered, sliding into the empty chair beside me. Chloe was the diplomatic one, always trying to smooth over the family's rough edges. I mean, I think it's sweet, but Mom's been popping antacids all week. Thanks for the pep talk, I said, watching Veronica work the crowd like she was running for office. Veronica, with her Stanford MBA, corner office in Manhattan, and a husband, Marcus, who wore $1,000 suits and talked about market volatility at dinner parties. That's not what I meant, Chloe said quickly. Ladies and gentlemen. My father, Richard, boomed through the microphone, cutting through the chatter. He stood at the podium, silver hair perfectly styled, an expression somewhere between resigned and disappointed. I'd like to say a few words about my daughter, Clara. My stomach dropped. This couldn't be good. Clara has always been unique, he began, and I caught Veronica smirking behind her champagne glass. While her sisters focused on careers and achievements, Clara chose a different path, a simpler path. The words simpler hung in the air like a judgment. I felt Liam's grip tighten on my hand. She's chosen to marry Liam, a man who works with his hands, curating films, and understands the value of physical media. Richard's pause felt deliberate, calculated. We wish them happiness in their humble life together. The applause was polite, lukewarm. I caught Eleanor dabbing at her eyes with a tissue, though I wasn't sure if they were tears of joy or mourning. Your dad's really laying it on thick, Liam said quietly, his voice steady despite the insult wrapped in wedding wishes. He's been practicing that speech for weeks, I replied, watching Veronica lean over to whisper something to Marcus. They both laughed, and I didn't need to hear the words to know they were about me. This was my family. The people who should have been celebrating me were instead treating my wedding like a funeral for my potential. Every achievement I'd ever earned, my college degree, my teaching awards, the small business I'd built selling organic produce, all dismissed because I'd chosen love over what they considered status. You know what? I said, standing up so abruptly that my chair scraped against the floor. The sound cut through the reception chatter, and suddenly, everyone was looking at me again. I raised my water glass, because of course I was too practical to waste good champagne on a toast, and looked directly at Veronica. To family, I said, my voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room, and to learning who really has your back when it matters. Veronica's smile faltered for just a moment, but she recovered quickly, raising her glass with the rest of the room. The toast felt like a line drawn in the sand, though I don't think anyone else realized it yet. As I sat back down, Liam leaned over and whispered, "That's my girl." I had no idea how prophetic those words would turn out to be. 3 years later, I stood in Veronica's marble-tiled foyer, holding a casserole dish that probably cost less than her doormat. The annual Blair family barbecue was in full swing, and I could already hear the familiar soundtrack of my childhood, clinking glasses, forced laughter, and the subtle art of one-upmanship disguised as conversation. "Clara." Eleanor's voice rang out as I stepped onto the pristine back patio. "There you are. We were just talking about the Hamptons house Veronica and Marcus bought." Of course, they were. Veronica glided over in a flowing white sundress that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Her smile was as perfectly maintained as her landscaping. "Oh, you brought food?" she said, eyeing my casserole dish like it might contain something contagious. "How thoughtful." "Green bean casserole," I said, setting it down on the catering table next to the professionally prepared spread. "From our garden." "Is it organic?" Marcus appeared beside his wife, martini in hand, his polo shirt so crisp it could cut paper. "Or just basic?" The question hung in the air while several family friends turned to listen. I felt that familiar heat creeping up my neck. "It's homegrown," Liam said quietly, stepping up beside me. His jeans were clean but worn, his button-down shirt simple cotton. Next to Marcus's designer everything, he looked like he'd wandered in from a different world. Right, Marcus nodded with exaggerated interest. "The movie thing. How's that going? Still selling old tapes?" "We're doing well," I said, forcing my voice to stay level. "The store's been profitable for 2 years running." Veronica laughed. The sound was like wind chimes in a hurricane. "Profitable? Oh, honey, that's adorable. Marcus just closed a deal worth more than your little video shop probably makes in a decade." "Actually," Richard interjected, walking over with his bourbon. "I've been meaning to ask about that. This film venture of yours, when are you planning to do something more substantial with your lives? Find a real career?" "Richard." Eleanor warned, but her tone suggested she wanted to hear the answer, too. "We're happy," Liam said simply. "The work is good." "Honest work." "Honest work," Marcus repeated, swirling his martini. "That's one way to put it. Though, I have to say, watching you two at family events is like watching a nature documentary. Here we see the quaint purveyors of physical media in their natural habitat." The group around us chuckled. I saw Chloe wince from across the patio, but she didn't say anything. "At least we sleep well at night," I said. The words slipped out before I could stop them. The laughter died. Marcus's smile tightened. "What's that supposed to mean?" Veronica asked, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Nothing," I said quickly. "Just that a clear conscience makes you tired." But the damage was done. I'd crossed an invisible line, and everyone could feel it. "Well," Eleanor said with forced brightness, "who wants to see the new pool house?" The group dispersed, following Veronica toward the latest addition to her property empire. I started to follow, but Liam caught my arm. "I'm going to check on the truck," he said. "Make sure we didn't leave the windows down." I knew he just needed air. These gatherings were harder on him than he let on, watching his wife get picked apart by her own family while he stood there powerless to stop it. "I'll come with you," I said. But he shook his head. "Stay. Enjoy your family." The word enjoy carried a weight we both understood. I found myself alone by the pool, watching the sun reflect off water that probably cost more to maintain than we spent on groceries. The sound of laughter drifted from the pool house tour, and I wondered what it would feel like to belong in that group instead of always standing on the outside looking in. "They're being awful today," Chloe said, appearing beside me with 2 glasses of wine. "Today?" I took the glass gratefully. "This is just Tuesday for them. It's not always like this, is it?" I turned to look at her. When was the last time anyone in this family asked about my life without it being a setup for a joke? Chloe was quiet for a moment. Things have been tense lately with Marcus's work. I mean, Veronica's been stressed. Stressed about what? I probably shouldn't say anything. Chloe? She glanced around, then leaned closer. Some of his investments haven't been going well. Big ones. Veronica's been making comments about having to adjust their lifestyle. Before I could respond, Veronica's voice cut across the patio like a blade. Clara, come settle a debate for us. I walked back to the group, wine glass in hand, already bracing myself. We were just discussing career trajectories, Veronica said, her smile predatory. And I was telling everyone how you've really found your calling. I mean, not everyone can handle the intellectual demands of, what do you call it? Selling old movies. The group laughed right on cue. Though I have to ask, she continued, stepping closer, don't you ever wonder what you could have accomplished if you'd applied yourself? I mean, really applied yourself, instead of settling for this quaint little life. The words hit like physical blows. Every insecurity I'd ever had about my choices, every moment of doubt, all wrapped up in my sister's perfectly manicured cruelty. I opened my mouth to respond, but Veronica wasn't finished. I'm just saying. Some of us dream bigger than dusty video archives. Real life happens on Wall Street, not in whatever little bubble you've created for yourself. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the people who'd been laughing looked uncomfortable now. I set down my wine glass with a steady hand. You're right, I said quietly. Real life does happen, and sometimes it happens in ways you never expect. 6 months after the barbecue from hell, I noticed the cracks starting to show. It started with missed phone calls. My parents, who used to check in weekly with updates about Veronica's latest achievements, suddenly went radio silent. When I did catch them, the conversations felt strained, like they were reading from a script with half the pages missing. How's Veronica doing? I asked during one particularly awkward call with Eleanor. Oh, you know Veronica. Always busy, always working on something big. The pause that followed stretched long enough to drive a truck through. And Marcus? He's fine. Listen, honey, I have to run. Your father's calling me. Click. I stared at the phone, frowning. In 30 years, my mother had never cut a conversation short unless someone was literally bleeding. The next red flag came at Chloe's birthday dinner. We met at a small Italian place downtown. Nothing fancy, which should have been my first clue. The Blairs didn't do nothing fancy. Where's everyone else? I asked as Chloe slid into the booth across from me and Liam. Mom and Dad had something come up. Veronica and Marcus are dealing with work stuff. Work stuff on a Saturday night? Chloe picked at her breadstick, avoiding my eyes. Things have been complicated lately. What kind of complicated? I probably shouldn't. Chloe? She glanced around the restaurant like she was checking for spies, then lowered her voice. Marcus's company is in trouble. Big trouble. Some kind of investment scheme that went sideways. I felt a little flutter in my chest. Not quite satisfaction, but something close to it. I pushed the feeling down, ashamed of myself. How bad? Bad enough that they had to put the Hamptons house on the market, and the boat. And Veronica's been calling around asking family members for short-term loans. The flutter got stronger. I took a sip of water to hide my expression. Have they asked you for money? Liam asked quietly. Not yet, Chloe admitted. But I think that's only because I don't have any to give. Chloe finally met my eyes. They haven't called you, have they? No, I said, but then again, we're just simple video store folk. What would we know about real money? Chloe winced. You heard about that? I was there, remember? Front row seat to the Veronica show. She's been different lately, stressed, snapping at everyone. I shrugged. Even the golden child has bad days, I guess. We ate in relative silence after that, but I could feel Liam watching me. He knew me well enough to recognize the wheels turning in my head. Later that week, as we were organizing new Blu-ray releases, my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello, Clara? The voice was shaky, older than I remembered. It's your mother. Mom, are you okay? You sound. I'm fine, sweetheart. Just tired. Listen, I was wondering, could you come by the house this weekend? There's something we need to discuss, as a family. The words sent a chill down my spine. In Blair family speak, something we need to discuss as a family was never good news. What kind of something? It's better if we talk in person. Can you come Saturday afternoon around 2? I looked at Liam, who was pretending not to eavesdrop while alphabetizing action movies. His shoulders were tense. I guess so. Should I bring anything? Just yourself and Liam, of course. The line went dead, leaving me staring at my phone. Family meeting? Liam asked without looking up. Sounds like it. He straightened, wiping his hands on his jeans. About what? She wouldn't say. But given what Chloe told us, they're going to ask us for money. It wasn't a question. We both knew it was true. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling while Liam's breathing evened out beside me. Part of me, a bigger part than I wanted to admit, was almost excited. After years of being treated like the family disappointment, they were finally going to need something from me. The irony was delicious. All those comments about our simple little life and playing in the past, and now they were going to come hat in hand to the video store girl they'd spent decades mocking. But another part of me, the part that still remembered being 7 years old and desperately wanting Veronica to include me in her games, felt sick at the thought of my family's pain. Saturday morning arrived, gray and drizzly, matching my mood. Liam was unusually quiet as we drove to my parents' house, his hands steady on the wheel, but his jaw tight. Whatever they ask, he said as we pulled into the familiar driveway, remember that you don't owe them anything. I know. Do you? Because you have a soft heart, Clara, and they know how to use that against you. I looked at the house where I'd grown up, with its perfect lawn and pristine shutters. It looked smaller than I remembered, less imposing. I'll be fine. But as we walked up the front steps, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Emergency family meeting. Please come. We need you. It was from Veronica. The same sister who'd spent years telling me I'd never amount to anything was asking for my help. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and rang the doorbell, my heart hammering against my ribs. Time to see what real life looked like when it came knocking on the video store owner's door. The living room felt like a courtroom when we walked in. Everyone was already there, arranged in a careful semicircle, like they'd been planning this ambush for weeks. My parents sat on the couch, looking older than I remembered. Veronica perched on the edge of an armchair, her designer clothes wrinkled, her usual perfect composure cracked around the edges. Marcus stood by the window, his back to us, hands shoved deep in his pockets. Only Chloe looked genuinely uncomfortable, shooting me an apologetic glance from her spot on the ottoman. Clara. Liam. My father said, gesturing to the 2 chairs they'd clearly positioned for us. Thank you for coming. We sat down, and I immediately felt like I was on trial. So, I said, breaking the heavy silence. What's this about? Eleanor twisted her wedding ring, a nervous habit I remembered from childhood. We wanted to talk to you about the family situation. What situation? Marcus finally turned around, and I was shocked by how haggard he looked. The cocky confidence was gone, replaced by something desperate and angry. Cut the act, Clara, he snapped. You know exactly what situation. Marcus. Veronica warned. But her voice lacked its usual authority. No, I'm done pretending, he continued. Your sister told you about our problems, didn't she? About the investments. I glanced at Chloe, who was studying her hands like they held the secrets of the universe. She mentioned you were having some difficulties. Difficulties? Marcus let out a bitter laugh. That's one way to put it. What Marcus means, Richard interjected, is that the family is facing some financial challenges. Significant ones. How significant? The question hung in the air like smoke. Finally, Eleanor spoke. We could lose everything. The words hit the room like a physical blow. Even though I'd suspected, hearing it confirmed was different. Everything? Liam asked quietly. The house, the savings, the retirement accounts, Richard said, his voice flat. Marcus made some investments on our behalf. Investments that didn't pan out. I looked at Marcus, who was glaring at me like this was somehow my fault. I'm sorry to hear that, I said carefully. But I'm not sure why you're telling us. Because we need your help, Veronica said, leaning forward. For the first time in my life, my sister was looking at me with something that might have been desperation. Your store, Richard said bluntly. The video shop. We need you to sell it. The words hit me like a slap. Excuse me? It's the only asset in the family that's not tied up in the mess, Eleanor explained, her voice pleading. If you sell the store, we can pay off the debts and start over. I felt Liam's hand find mine, his grip steady and warm. You want us to sell our business, I said slowly. To fix your mistakes. It's not about mistakes, Marcus said, his voice rising. It's about family. About doing what's right. What's right? The words came out sharper than I intended. What's right is asking your family to sacrifice everything they've worked for. You've worked for. Veronica stood up, her composure finally cracking completely. Clara, you're playing house in a blockbuster relic. This is real life. Real consequences. Real consequences for choices you made. We're family. Eleanor cried, tears streaming down her face. Family helps family. Where was this family loyalty when you spent years mocking everything we built? I stood up too, my hands shaking. Where was it when you treated Liam like he was selling snake oil? That's not fair, Richard said. But his voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? You want to talk about fair? Let's talk about every family gathering where you made us feel like charity cases. Every comment about our simple little business. Every time you acted like we were embarrassing you just by existing. Clara, Chloe started. But I was on a roll now. And now, when your golden boy's schemes fall apart, suddenly you remember we exist? Suddenly we're family? This isn't about the past, Veronica said, her voice desperate. This is about now. About survival. Your survival, built on our sacrifice? It's just a store. Marcus exploded. It's a dying brick and mortar and nothing. You could open another store anywhere. The silence that followed was deafening. Even he seemed to realize he'd gone too far. Liam stood up slowly, his movements deliberate and controlled. I think, he said quietly, we should go. Wait. Eleanor pleaded. Please. Just think about it. We're not asking you to decide right now. Actually, Richard said, his voice hard. We are. The creditors won't wait much longer. We need an answer by Monday. Monday? I stared at him. You're giving us 2 days to decide whether to destroy our lives for you? You're being dramatic, Veronica said, but her voice was shaking. It's just property. We're talking about people's lives here. My daughter's future. What about our future? You don't have children, she shot back. You don't understand what's at stake. The words hit like a physical blow. The unspoken implication that our childless marriage somehow made our lives worth less hung in the air between us. Liam's jaw tightened, and I saw his hands clench into fists. We're leaving, I said, grabbing my purse. Clara, please. Eleanor called as we headed for the door. Just think about it, please. I turned back one last time, looking at these people who shared my blood but felt like strangers. I'll think about it, I said. But you should think about something, too. You should think about what kind of people ask their family to lose everything to save them from their own mistakes. As we walked to the truck, Richard's voice followed us out. You'll come to your senses once you realize what you owe us, Clara. What we've done for you over the years. Liam's hand was on the truck door, but he paused, his knuckles white against the metal. What we owe them? I said loud enough for everyone to hear. After 30 years of being treated like the family disappointment, what exactly do we owe them? No one had an answer for that. At least not one they were willing to say out loud. The drive home was silent, except for the crunch of gravel under our tires. Liam's knuckles were still white on the steering wheel, and I could practically feel the anger radiating off him in waves. We pulled into our driveway, and I stared at our modest home, the business my family wanted us to sacrifice like it meant nothing. The evening light made the neighborhood look peaceful. Everything I'd ever wanted was right here. I need to show you something, Liam said as we got out of the truck. Liam, I'm not selling. I don't care what I know you're not selling. That's not what this is about. He headed toward the detached garage behind our house, his stride purposeful. There are things I should have told you years ago. I followed him, confused. What things? Instead of answering, he led me to a high-tech studio I'd only seen a few times, crammed with servers, multiple monitors, and blinking lights. I'd always assumed it was for his special projects. He went straight to a filing cabinet I'd never seen him open. Sit down, he said, pulling out a thick manila folder. Liam, you're scaring me. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to show you who we really are. He opened the folder and spread papers across his desk. What we really are. I leaned forward, squinting at the documents, legal papers, patents, financial statements with numbers that made my head spin. What is all this? This, he said, pointing to a patent document, is the algorithm for our adaptive content recommendation engine. The one I first tested on our store's local customers. I read the header, patent granted to Liam Stone for AI-driven personalized media curation system. You patented it 3 years ago? It's being licensed to major streaming services now. He pulled out another document. This is the back-end framework for our secure digital distribution network. The platform that lets us license content globally. Another patent. Another document with Liam's name at the top. I don't understand. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted to be sure. I wanted to build something real before I started talking about it. He sat down across from me, his expression serious. Clara, our video store isn't just a video store. It's the public face of a research and development lab. Everything we did there, every system we tested, it's all part of something bigger. My head was spinning. How much bigger? He pulled out a financial statement and slid it across the desk. The numbers at the bottom made me blink hard, certain I was misreading them. Are we worth, the company is worth that? Realstream Technologies. I started it 5 years ago, right after we got married. Used the physical store as the testing ground for everything. I stared at the papers, then at my husband. You've been running a tech company this whole time? A very quiet tech company. Most of our clients don't even know where the innovations come from. They just know the systems work. But why keep it secret? Why let my family think we're just video store owners? Liam was quiet for a moment, organizing the papers into neat piles. Because I wanted to see who they really were, he said finally. I wanted to see how they'd treat us when they thought we had nothing to offer. The words hit me like a physical blow. You knew. All this time, you knew how they saw us, and you just let it happen. I let them show their true colors, yes. While I suffered through every family gathering, thinking we really were the poor relations. Liam, do you have any idea how that felt? Sitting there while they mocked everything we'd built? Thinking maybe they were right. Maybe I'd thrown my life away. Liam reached for my hand, but I pulled back. You let me doubt myself. You let me think we were struggling while you were sitting on all this. We were never struggling. Our bills were always paid. We never wanted for anything. That's not the point. I stood up, pacing to the window. The point is you let me feel small. You let them make me feel small. I never wanted that, but you allowed it. The silence stretched between us, heavy with years of unspoken truths. There's more, he said quietly. I turned back to him. More what? Marcus's company. The investments that failed. Liam pulled out another folder. He bet against us. Against Realstream Technologies. The words didn't make sense at first. What do you mean? He shorted our intellectual property, or at least a related market. Put his clients' money, including your parents' retirement fund, on a bet that our company would fail. He was so convinced that anything connected to physical media or small-time tech had to be worthless that he staked everything on our failure. I sank back into the chair, the full picture finally coming into focus. He lost their money betting against us. Every penny. My phone buzzed on the desk. Text message from Chloe. They're coming to the house tomorrow. All of them. Dad says they won't take no for an answer. I showed Liam the message. He read it, then looked up at me with something that might have been anticipation. Good, he said. Let them come. Good? Liam, they're going to demand we sell everything. They're going to learn the truth. He stood up, gathering the papers back into their folders. All of it. What are you planning? I'm planning to give them exactly what they've been asking for all these years. His smile was sharp, unfamiliar. A real education about who we are and what we're worth. And then what? Then we see if they're really family, or if they're just people who share your DNA. I looked at my husband, really looked at him, and realized I was seeing a side of him I'd never known existed. The quiet curator was still there, but underneath was something harder, more calculating. You've been planning this for a long time, haven't you? Preparing for it. There's a difference, isn't there? He met my eyes, and for the first time since I'd known him, Liam looked dangerous. I guess we'll find out tomorrow. They arrived like a storm front. 3 cars pulling into our driveway at exactly 2 o'clock, kicking up dust clouds that settled on their expensive paint jobs. I watched from the kitchen window as they climbed out, my parents looking grim, Veronica clutching a leather portfolio, Marcus adjusting his tie like he was heading into a boardroom instead of our living room. Even little Sophie was there, Veronica's 8-year-old daughter, looking confused and out of place in her pristine white dress. "Showtime," Liam said quietly, straightening his simple button-down shirt. He'd insisted on dressing exactly like he always did, jeans, a band t-shirt, the same clothes that had earned him years of condescending looks. The knock on our door was sharp, authoritative. My father's knock. I opened it to find them arranged like a delegation. My parents flanking Veronica and Marcus, with Chloe hovering uncertainly in the back, holding Sophie's hand. "We need to talk," Richard said without preamble. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. They filed into our living room, and I watched them take in the simple furniture, the handmade quilts, the movie posters on the walls. The same room they'd been in dozens of times, but now they were seeing it differently, calculating its worth, measuring its sacrifice potential. "Please sit," Liam said, gesturing to the couch and chairs. "We'd rather stand," Marcus said, his voice tight with barely controlled desperation. "This won't take long." "Actually," Richard said, pulling out a folder. "We brought the paperwork to make this easier." He set it on our coffee table like he was serving a legal summons. "Sale documents for the property. We've already had it appraised. Found a buyer. All you need to do is sign." I stared at the papers, then at my family. "You had our property appraised without asking us?" "We're trying to be efficient," my mother said, her voice strained. "Time is a factor here." "Whose time?" Liam asked mildly. "Don't play games," Marcus snapped. "You know exactly what's at stake. Your parents could lose their house. Veronica and I could lose everything. Sophie could lose her college fund, her future." "Daddy, what's happening?" Sophie asked, tugging on her father's sleeve. "Nothing, sweetheart," Veronica said quickly. "The adults are just talking." "About what?" "About family," Eleanor said, her eyes fixed on me. "About how family takes care of each other." I felt the familiar guilt starting to creep in, the same feeling that had controlled me my entire life. But then I looked at Liam, who was watching the scene with an expression I couldn't quite read. "You're right," he said suddenly. "Family should take care of each other." Relief flooded Eleanor's face. "Oh, thank goodness. I knew you'd understand." "Which is why," Liam continued, walking to his desk in the corner, "I think it's time we had an honest conversation about family." He pulled out a thick manila folder, the same one from last night, and returned to the living room. "What's that?" Veronica asked, eyeing the folder suspiciously. "Information," Liam said, settling into his chair. "About who we really are. About what this quaint little video shop actually represents." "We don't have time for games," Richard said impatiently. "We need a decision." "You'll get one," Liam said. "But first, let me ask you something, Marcus. In your professional opinion, what would you say our business is worth?" Marcus glanced around dismissively. "Maybe 20,000-30,000 if you're lucky. It's a dying business, not exactly prime real estate." "Interesting assessment." Liam opened the folder and pulled out a document. "What if I told you that our quaint little video shop is actually the public face for Realstream Technologies, a company worth $50 million? The room went dead silent. "What?" Veronica said faintly. "Realstream Technologies," Liam continued conversationally. "Maybe you've heard of it." "Your husband certainly has." Marcus's face went white. "That's impossible." "Is it?" Liam pulled out another document. "Patent number 100-084-7392. AI-driven personalized media curation system. Inventor, Liam Stone. Filed 3 years ago. Currently licensed to major streaming platforms and content providers across the globe." He set the patent on the coffee table next to the sale documents. "Patent number 11-23-047. Secure Digital Distribution Network. Also mine. Licensed to media companies nationwide. Another document joined the first. Should I continue? Because I have about 30 more patents here, all developed right here from this dying brick and mortar. Eleanor was staring at the papers like they were written in a foreign language. I don't understand. It's simple, Liam said. While you were all busy looking down on us, we were building something. Something significant. But you're just a video store owner, Richard said weakly. I'm a video store owner who happens to hold a PhD in media systems engineering from Stanford. I'm also the CEO of a company that's revolutionizing how people consume media worldwide. Veronica sank into the nearest chair. This can't be real. Oh, it's real. Liam pulled out a financial statement. Want to see our quarterly earnings? The numbers on the page made Marcus physically recoil. But wait, Liam said, his voice taking on a harder edge. There's more, Marcus. You mentioned being familiar with Realstream Technologies. I might have heard the name. You did more than hear it. You bet against it. You convinced your clients, including Clara's parents, to short our intellectual property, betting that our digital distribution model would fail. The silence was deafening. You lost their retirement money, betting that we would fail, Liam continued. You were so convinced that anything connected to physical media or small-time tech had to be worthless that you staked everything on our destruction. Marcus's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. The beautiful irony, Liam said, standing up, is that you didn't just lose their money, you lost it to us. Every dollar you gambled against Realstream Technologies went straight into our pockets when our valuation exploded. Oh my God, Chloe whispered. So, when you ask us to sell our business to save you from your mistakes, Liam continued, you're asking us to sacrifice our life's work to fix the damage you caused by betting against our life's work. The front door opened and a man in an expensive suit walked in like he owned the place. Sorry I'm late, he said, setting a briefcase on the table. Traffic was murder. Everyone, Liam said calmly, I'd like you to meet Mr. Davis, our attorney. Mr. Davis smiled at the room full of stunned faces. I believe you have some questions for my client. Mr. Davis opened his briefcase with the precision of a surgeon, pulling out documents and arranging them on our coffee table like he was setting up for surgery. The sale papers Richard had brought suddenly looked pathetic next to the official legal documents spreading across the surface. Let's start with the basics, Mr. Davis said, adjusting his glasses. The property in question, both the residential and commercial properties, are owned outright by Realstream Technologies, a corporation wholly owned by Liam and Clara Stone. No liens, no mortgages, no encumbrances of any kind. That's impossible, Richard said. We helped them with the down payment, which was repaid in full, with interest, 18 months after the purchase. Mr. Davis interrupted smoothly. I have the canceled checks right here. He slid a document across the table. My father stared at it like it might bite him. Furthermore, Mr. Davis continued, any attempt to force a sale through legal channels would be inadvisable. Realstream Technologies holds proprietary rights to highly valuable intellectual property and is protected under numerous corporate and patent laws. Proprietary rights? Eleanor whispered. Oh yes, Liam said. The major studios have been very interested in our work. We're currently developing next-generation content delivery systems that could revolutionize how films are distributed and consumed globally. Marcus finally found his voice. This is all very impressive, but it doesn't change the fact that we're family. That we need help. Family? I repeated, standing up. The word tasted bitter in my mouth. Let's talk about family, shall we? I walked to the mantel and picked up a framed photo from my college graduation. Remember this day? I graduated summa cum laude with a degree in environmental science. You know what you said to me, Dad? Richard's face was stone. You said, why didn't you put that big brain to a real job instead of this? You said I was wasting my potential. I set the photo down and picked up another one. Our wedding day. And this day? When I married the love of my life. You spent the entire reception apologizing to people for my poor choice. You told Aunt Margaret that you hoped I'd come to my senses before it was too late. Clara, Eleanor started. I'm not finished. My voice was steady, but my hands were shaking. Every family gathering for 5 years, every holiday, every birthday, every celebration, you made sure I knew exactly where I stood. The disappointment, the failure, the one who settled for less. Veronica was crying now, mascara streaking down her cheeks. We didn't mean, you meant every word. I turned to face her directly. You called our life a joke. You said real life happens on Wall Street, not in our little bubble. You mocked everything we built, everything we cared about. But we didn't know, she sobbed. We didn't know about the company, about the money. And that's exactly the point. The words exploded out of me. You didn't know and you didn't care to know. You saw what you wanted to see. Two people you could look down on to make yourselves feel better. Mr. Davis cleared his throat. If I may, there's another matter we should address. Address the financial losses your family has suffered. He pulled out another document. Realstream Technologies has been tracking the short positions taken against our intellectual property and related market sectors. We're required to report significant trading activity to the SEC. Marcus went even paler, if that was possible. The trades were made through Pinnacle Investment Group, where Mr. Marcus Olson serves as senior partner. The total exposure was approximately $2,300,000, representing the retirement accounts of 17 clients. 17 families, Liam said quietly. 17 families who trusted you with their life savings, and you gambled it all on a bet that we would fail. It was a sure thing. Marcus said desperately. Media startups fail 90% of the time. The odds were that you'd do your homework before risking other people's money, Mr. Davis interrupted. Did you research the company? Did you research the patents? Did you look into the leadership team's background? Silence. You didn't, did you? You saw a video store and assumed it was worthless, just like you assumed we were worthless. We can sue, Richard said suddenly. For the losses. For damages. Mr. Davis smiled. And it wasn't a pleasant expression. Please do. I'd love to explain to a jury how your son-in-law lost your retirement money betting against your daughter's company. The optics alone would be fascinating. What do you want? Veronica asked, her voice broken. What do you want from us? I looked around the room at these people who shared my blood, but had never really been my family. My parents, who'd spent 30 years making me feel small. My sister, who'd turned cruelty into an art form. Marcus, who'd gambled away their future on his own arrogance. And little Sophie, sitting in the corner, watching her world fall apart. I want you to leave, I said simply. I want you to walk out that door and never come back. Clara, please. Eleanor begged. We're sorry. We're so sorry. We made mistakes, but we're family. No, I said, and the word felt like freedom. Family doesn't treat each other the way you treated us. Family doesn't spend years tearing each other down. Family doesn't come crawling back only when they need something. But what about us? Veronica asked. What about Sophie? What about her future? I looked at my niece, this innocent child caught in the wreckage of adult failures. Sophie's future was never my responsibility. It was yours. And you gambled it away. You're really going to let us lose everything? Richard asked. After everything we've done for you? Everything you've done for me? I laughed, and it sounded harsh even to my own ears. What exactly have you done for me, Dad? Besides spend 30 years making me feel like I wasn't good enough. He had no answer. The meeting is over, Liam said, standing up. Mr. Davis, would you escort our guests out? Wait. Veronica said, desperation making her voice shrill. You'll regret this, Clara. You'll regret turning your back on family. When you're old and alone, you'll remember this day and wish you'd made a different choice. I met her eyes, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of my sister. You're right, I said. I will remember this day. I'll remember it as the day I finally stopped letting you define my worth. They filed out like mourners leaving a funeral, taking their demands and their entitlement with them. Through the window, I watched them drive away, leaving nothing but dust clouds and silence. For the first time in 30 years, I was free. The silence after they left felt different than any quiet I'd ever experienced. Not empty, but full, like the air itself had been holding its breath and could finally exhale. Mr. Davis packed up his briefcase with the same methodical precision he'd used to unpack it. Well, he said, snapping the latches shut, that went about as expected. You've done this before? I asked. Not exactly like this. but I've seen enough family dynamics to know how these things play out. He straightened his tie. People show you who they are when they're desperate. Your family showed you, and now you move forward without them. After Mr. Davis left, Liam and I sat on our porch, watching the sunset. Any regrets? He asked. I thought about Eleanor's tears, about Veronica's desperation, about little Sophie caught in the middle of adult failures. I thought about the years of humiliation, the constant feeling of not being good enough, the way they'd made me doubt everything I'd chosen. No, I said, and meant it. No regrets. Even about your family? They made their choice long before today. They chose to see us as less than we were. They chose to bet against us. Literally and figuratively. I stopped walking and turned to face him. I choose us. I choose this life, this work, this future we're building. Liam smiled, the same gentle smile that had made me fall in love with him in the first place. Good. Because I have plans for us. Big plans. Before I could ask, my phone rang. Chloe's name flashed on the screen. I should probably take it, Liam said. She's different from the rest. I answered on the third ring. Hello, Clara? Chloe's voice was thick with tears. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Chloe. No. Let me say this. I knew how they treated you, and I never stood up for you. I told myself I was staying neutral, but there is no neutral when someone you love is being hurt. I closed my eyes, feeling tears I hadn't expected. You were caught in the middle. I was a coward. And now, God, Clara, the things they're saying about you. Dad's telling everyone you abandoned the family. Mom's acting like you personally destroyed their lives. And Veronica. What about Veronica? She's bitter. Really bitter. She keeps saying you planned this whole thing. That you and Liam set them up somehow. We didn't set anyone up. We just stopped pretending to be less than we are. I know that. I know you. Even if I didn't defend you like I should have. Chloe's voice cracked. Can you ever forgive me? I looked out at our home, at the life Liam and I had built together despite everything. You're calling me now. That counts for something. I want to see you. Not to ask for anything. Just. I miss my sister. The real one, not the version they tried to make you into. Come for dinner Sunday. Bring whoever you want, but leave the drama at home. Just me. I promise. After I hung up, Liam reached over and took my hand. One down. Do you think any of the others will come around? Does it matter? I considered that a week ago. The thought of losing my family would have terrified me. Now, sitting here with my husband in a life we'd built free and clear, surrounded by our quiet success, it felt more like shedding old skin. No, I said finally. It doesn't matter. The next morning, I was at the store, reorganizing our cult film section, when a sleek black car pulled up. My heart jumped, wondering if my parents had come back. But when I looked up, I saw a woman I didn't recognize climb out, wearing a sharp business suit and carrying a tablet. Mrs. Stone, she called out. I'm Miss Chen from Zenith Media Ventures. I was hoping to speak with you and your husband about Realstream Technologies' latest content management system. Liam emerged from the back office, wiping his hands on a rag. Miss Chen, you made good time. The preliminary results you sent were incredible, she said, shaking his hand. We'd like to fast-track the partnership agreement for the global implementation of your system. It could revolutionize our entire content delivery infrastructure. Global implementation? I asked. A multi-year, 9-figure deal, Ms. Chen said, smiling. Your husband's work could change how billions of people access and enjoy media. I stared at Liam. You didn't mention, I wanted to be sure before I got your hopes up, he said. But yes, we're about to get very busy. As Ms. Chen and Liam discussed partnership terms and timelines, I found myself thinking about my family's visit. They'd come here demanding we sacrifice everything to save them from their mistakes, never realizing they were asking us to destroy something that could change an entire industry. The irony was perfect. They'd spent years calling us small, insignificant, worthless. Meanwhile, we were quietly working on something that mattered more than any of their status symbols or investment portfolios. That evening, Liam and I walked through our quiet neighborhood as the sun painted the sky orange and pink. The same walk we'd taken hundreds of times, but everything felt different now. Any regrets? He asked. I thought about Eleanor's tears, about Veronica's desperation, about little Sophie caught in the middle of adult failures. I thought about the years of humiliation, the constant feeling of not being good enough, the way they'd made me doubt everything I'd chosen. No, I said, and meant it. No regrets. Even about your family? They made their choice long before today. They chose to see us as less than we were. They chose to bet against us. Literally and figuratively. I stopped walking and turned to face him. I choose us. I choose this life, this work, this future we're building. Liam smiled, the same gentle smile that had made me fall in love with him in the first place. Good. Because I have plans for us. Big plans. Bigger than a $50 million company? Much bigger. He gestured toward the horizon. We're going to change the world, Clara. One stream at a time. As we walked back toward the house, I realized something had shifted inside me. The part of me that had always sought my family's approval, that had carried their disappointment like a weight, it was gone. In its place was something stronger, cleaner. I was exactly where I belonged, with exactly the right person, doing exactly the work I was meant to do. And for the first time in my life, that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.